Hello friends, welcome back to Strategic Management. And after strategy implementation of strategy with reference to the steps we wanted to take in accordance to the structure or augmentation of the structure according to the strategic implementation, now we should be thinking in terms of going for a full circle by talking about the evaluation of strategy, auditing some steps, what we have done, because until unless we keep on evaluating, you see we are monitoring, but we keep on evaluating and we generate a feedback circle, we won't be able to augment the next step, and we are talking of a long journey in terms of a strategic path. So, if we keep on augmenting the steps, we keep on correcting the course basically, then only we would be able to reach to our path, and that too well within time, and or enhancing the span of an organization's life, that is longevity of life, is the objective. Spreading prosperity and opulence is the objective. Keeping people all along is the objective, larger objective, mission is there, and we have to reach to the business vision as well as the vision. And here comes, that if we want to evaluate this step, we have to keep an eye on the vision. How we wanted this world to be, why we are existing, what has been our business vision, how we are looking at our mission. Sometimes when we evaluate, we augment the mission statement also, that is also true, in the wake of how the world looks like as of now and how we should be contributing more towards the development of this world. We keep on augmenting things. Vision is there, so that is the larger guiding force. But then mission is also augmented, objectives are augmented now and then, and goals are frequently augmented. Monitoring systems are augmented, measurement criteria is augmented many a times, and so on. So, you see, evaluation is a very important thing, but the story starts from how I want this world to be. So, if I have thought of something, or I means the organization has thought of something in terms of should we be looking at this world, and what our role would be there as far as that thought goes basically. So, that role should guide us in terms of the evaluating steps or evaluating criteria first of all. So, that should be is the guiding force. How we want this to be, should be kind of. So, we are referring to Tilles S 1963, How to Evaluate Corporate Strategy, Harvard Business Review, an interesting important paper, a very strong argument which is built up in this paper. This was written early, but stands with its relevance till now, holds the relevance actually, and that is why we are referring to this, and largely it will justify how we should be looking at the evaluation perspective or developing evaluation criteria for our organization, what kind of measurement criteria we should be building on, developing upon as far as the steps go to evaluate the complete path which we have taken up till now, and to think in terms of the future path as well. The author says, no good military officer would undertake even a small scale attack on a limited objective without a clear concept of his strategy. No seasoned politician would undertake a campaign for a major office without an equally clear concept of his strategy. And this is a relevant time, India is going through elections. This is the second last day of April 2024, and June 4th would be the results of parliamentary elections in India. So, I would repeat this, no seasoned politician would undertake a campaign for a major office without an equally clear concept of his strategy. In the field of business management, however, we frequently find men deploying resources on a large scale without any clear notion of what their strategy is. Seymour Tilles. Now, you see, the point is that this statement gives us a complete perspective and view, although the author is more focused upon the competitive perspective of as far as the strategy implementation go, the war-led perspective. It can be complemented with the contemporary thoughts of blue ocean as well, fortune at the bottom of the pyramid as well, as far as capitalism at the crossroads as well, and so on. Whatever we have discussed, that can be complemented in this kind of a thought process, but it is a relevant statement. Further, the author says that company's strategy is a vital ingredient in determining its future. A valid strategy will yield growth, profit or whatever other objectives the managers have established. An inappropriate strategy will not only will fail to yield benefits, but also may result in disaster. It is evident in many cases when you have heard of that companies have wound off their operations, they have sold themselves. I have talked about acquisitions and takeovers and so on. Now, how author defines the strategy with a different kind of a perspective, which is complementary to our thought process, although we have been talking about strategy with a long term perspective wherein it is driven by vision. So, author defines strategy with the perspective of strategic steps which we are concerned with at this moment in terms of implementation especially, and I have told you, several times, I have mentioned this in front of you, that strategic steps are also to be mentioned as strategy. So, strategy is a set of goals and major policies, and here comes that policy framework which we have been talking about. The definition is as simple as that, but while the notion of a strategy is extremely easy to grasp, the author has mentioned, working out an agreed upon statement for a given company can be a fundamental contribution to the organization's future success. In order to develop such a statement, managers must be able to identify precisely what is meant by a goal and what is meant by major policy. Double underline this, achieving. Now, he has categorized few things basically. So, achieving, in order to state what a company expects to achieve, where we want us to be, what business we belong to, what business we are into, how we want this world to be. So, in order to and what our role should be, in order to state what a company expects to achieve, it is important to state what it hopes to do with respect to its environment, what my role is. For instance, and an author is mentioning about an organization which he would have been monitoring those days or preceding to his article. So, for instance, Ernst Breech, chairman of board of the Ford Motor Company, said that strategy formulated by his company in 1946 was based on a desire, and that is precisely what we are talking of, to hold our own in what we foresaw would be a rich but hotly competitive market. And this is how you would be evaluating yourself, to hold our own. The view of the environment implicit in this statement is unmistakable: an expanding overall demand, increasing competition, and emphasis on market share as a measure of performance against competitors. This is the evaluation criteria. Now, becoming, very interesting. If you ask young men what they want to accomplish by the time they are 40, the answers you get fall into two distinct categories. There are those, the great majority, author has talked about that, probably still it is the great majority, and I think it is, who will respond in terms of what they want to have. This is especially true of graduate students of business administration. I remember such question was asked by one of my seniors to me once, that what you want to be and how you want to nurture your dreams and so on. I would narrate that story somewhere else someday, but the same question was being asked and my answer was not this one. My answer probably matches something else. So, there are some men, however, who will answer in terms of the kind of men they hope to be. Yeah, I think I was on this side. These are the only ones who have a clear idea of where they are going. The same is true of companies. For far too many companies, what little things goes on about the future is done primarily in money terms. This is a divergence, this is a division basically, and that creates the frame of thought you would nurture, and that is how you would evaluate, and that is where precisely the entrance of the thought associated with your potential comes in, and that has been emphasized by me at many a times in previous discussions, that we have to analyze our potential and we have to evaluate our steps according to that potential and the desire we nurture to play a positive role in this world. And I have been using these two words time and again and submitting in front of you that prosperity and opulence of all of this world should be the larger objective of all the organizations, and that is where the visionaries stand for. There is nothing wrong with financial planning, author also adds, and I also agree. Most companies should do more of it, but there is a basic fallacy in confusing a financial plan with thinking about the kind of company you want yours to become. It is like saying, when I am 40, I am going to be rich. It leaves too many basic questions unanswered. Rich in what way? Rich doing what? The lesson of these experiences is that a key element of setting goals is the ability to see them in terms of more than a single dimension. Both money and product policy are a part of statement of objectives, but it is essential that these viewed as the concrete expressions of a more abstract set of goals, the satisfaction of the needs of significant groups which cooperate to ensure the company's continued existence. Why am I here in this world? What is the purpose? Just to briefly say, when my senior asked me this question, I said that I want to do X for my father, Y for my mother. This was a general kind of a thing. I may not reveal the whole story at this moment, might not be the right time, but he said that not everyone has this kind of a dream, because you did not say that this is the kind of money I would like to earn. I was studying business management at that time, away from my home and country, and we were discussing on what role I would be playing in future in this world, basically how, and I never knew that I would join academics after having a stint in corporate world and so on. Then the author adds that need to be explicit. The first thing to be said about corporate strategy is that having one is a step forward. Any strategy once made explicit can quickly be evaluated and improved if it is explicit. But if no attempt is ever made to commit it to paper, there is always a danger that the strategy is either incomplete or misunderstood. Another reason for making strategy explicit is the assistance it provides for delegation and for coordination. To an ever increasing extent, management is a team activity whereby groups of executives contribute to corporate success. Making strategy explicit makes it far easier for each executive to appreciate what the overall goals are and what his own contribution to them must be. And here comes the 6 criteria on which to base the answer of the to the question, is your strategy right for you? How to evaluate the strategy. So, the criteria are internal consistency, consistency with the environment, appropriateness in the light of available resources, satisfactory degree of risk, appropriate time horizon, workability, and let us see what all these say one by one very quickly. Then we would be going on towards understanding the relevance of strategic audit. So, is the strategy internally consistent? Internal consistency refers to cumulative impact of individual policies on the corporate goals. In a well worked out strategy, each policy fits into an integrated pattern. We have talked about that, but now we are evaluating it against that. That is precisely, so we are creating a scale against what we wanted it to be like. Our strategy should be internally consistent, that is we always wanted. So, it should be judged not only in terms of itself, but also in terms of how it relates to other policies which the company has established and to the goals it is pursuing. In a dynamic company, consistency can never be taken for granted. Doing things with the same zeal, same enthusiasm, same purposefulness, similar kind of an orientation and strength. Many family owned organizations pursue a pair of policies which soon become inconsistent. Author has observed those kind of things. This can be a statement which author wanted us to learn, but this can be beyond family owned businesses as well. So, rapid expansion, retention of exclusive family control of the firm, if they are successful in expanding, the need for additional financing soon raises major problems concerning the extent to which exclusive family control can be maintained, and that was the time when family controlled businesses were expanding towards professional large organizations, and we have talked about that in corporate governance as well. The criteria for internal consistency is an especially important one for evaluating strategies, because it identifies those areas where strategic choices will eventually have to be made. Consistency with the environment has both a static and a dynamic aspect. In a static sense, it implies judging the efficacy of policies with respect to the environment as it exists now, political environment, technological environment and so on. We have talked about that. In a dynamic sense, it means judging the efficacy of policies with respect to the environment as it appears to be changing. One purpose of a viable strategy is to ensure the long run success of an organization. And since the environment of a company is constantly changing, ensuring success over the long run means that management must constantly be assessing the degree to which policies previously established are consistent with the environment as it exists now. In one sense, therefore, establishing a strategy is like aiming at a moving target. And this is an important statement, aiming at a moving target basically. Then again, with terms of with reference to resources, resources are those things that a company is or has and that help it to achieve its corporate objectives. Included are money, competence and facilities, but these by no means complete the list. In companies selling consumer goods, for example, the major resource may be the name of the product. In any case, there are two basic issues which management must decide in relating strategy and resources. These are, what are our critical resources? Is the proposed strategy appropriate for available resources? Does the strategy involve an acceptable degree of risk? Strategy and resources taken together determine the degree of risk which the company is undertaking. For example, and author has used this particular example, so that had been observed at the time of writing this paper. So, for example, he says when the old Underwood Corporation decided to enter the computer field, it was making what might have been an extremely astute strategic choice. However, the fact that it ran out of money before it could accomplish anything in that field turned its pursuit of opportunity into prelude to disaster. This is not to say that the strategy was bad. However, the course of action pursued was a high risk strategy. Interesting thing. So, does the strategy have an appropriate time horizon? A significant part of every strategy is the time horizon on which it is based. A viable strategy not only reveals what goals are to be accomplished, it says something about when the aims are to be achieved. When the aims are to be achieved. Goals like resources have time based utility. A new product development, a plant put on stream, a degree of market penetration becomes significant strategic objectives only if accomplished by a certain time. Delay may deprive them of all strategic significance. Netflix entered into OTT platform, being an OTT platform into OTT business at the right time. Is the strategy workable? At first glance, it would seem that the simplest way to evaluate a corporate strategy is the completely pragmatic one of asking, does it work? However, further reflection should reveal that if we try to answer that question, we are immediately faced with a quest for criteria. What is the evidence of a strategy working? Evidence of a strategy working. Quantitative indices of performance are a good start, but they really measure the influence of two critical factors combined, the strategy selected and the skill with which it is executed. But do they really measure this actually? So, faced with the failure to achieve anticipated results, both of these influences must be critically examined. And what are these? The strategy selected and the skill with which it is being executed, because here we would augment if required. Now, let us go to strategic audit. What is an audit? An official examination and verification of accounts and records, especially of financial accounts, and auditing in terms of every activity of the organization at large. So, audit is the examination or inspection of various books of accounts by an auditor, followed by a physical checking of inventory to make sure that all departments are following documented system of recording transactions. It is done to ascertain the accuracy of financial statements provided by the organization. Largely it is related to financial auditing, but financial auditing indicates on all the activities or reflects on all the activities which organization has been pursuing at the end of the day, because it is actually expressed there in numbers. So, that becomes a criteria of looking into precisely what can be seen with the perspective of correction, and correction translates into augmentation of processes. A formal examination of how successfully an organization is operating and how well it is using resources to work towards its goals over time. One aim of a strategic audit is to ensure that the business portfolio is strong, and we have been referring to Cambridge Dictionary, the Economic Times and Cambridge Dictionary. So, is it possible to create a formal mechanism within the existing governance process so that the board can exercise proactively its responsibility for strategic oversight? The answer is yes. We have talked about corporate governance mechanisms wherein the role of board was emphasized very strongly, and here comes a chord which is associated with strategic audit as well, because ultimately board and the top leadership of any organization has to play a very important role in terms of strategic audit. The mechanism is a formal strategic review process, a strategic audit which imposes its own discipline on both the board and the management. much as the financial audit process does. An audit can be designed to stand the test of time and survive the inevitable disputes over authority. We have talked about that. We have talked about conflict, situation of conflict, agency perspective and so on, compensation aspects also, but here the role of board and top leadership in terms of auditing the situation is being emphasized upon. The process would center the leadership of strategic oversight in the hands of independent directors, we talked about that, mentioned about that, and provide them with the authority to establish both the criteria for and the methods of review. And this is precisely how it is being done. It would further require the board and the CEO to hold a regular joint review company performance. Performance criteria are listed and you have to review that performance and then you have to augment the process. So, you see, evaluation and auditing comes hand in hand. That is an explicit process in terms of broadly how we are going, and this is where we are precisely marking on that this should be looked upon. This is not done as it should have been, because it is expressed that way in terms of numbers. So, and it would signal to the investing public that both the board and the management accept the board's authority and responsibility for active ongoing strategic oversight. There is an element of establishing the criteria. So, the most important requirement for the data used in strategic review process is that they be objective, precise. In addition, the criteria should be familiar, well understood, and accepted measures of financial performance must be there. Database design and maintenance element should be there. So, an effective strategic oversight process requires that the board take control not only of the criteria of performance, but also of the database in which the criteria are maintained. And here we are using Donaldson G 1995, a new tool for boards, the Strategic Audit Harvard Business Review. And that day we also referred to Corporate Governance 2.0 by Subramanian, so a law professor of Harvard. And we talked about different kinds of aspects which can be seen in coherence with this kind of a discussion here at this moment. So, the Strategic Audit Committee is mentioned in this paper. There is no existing mechanism in most governance processes for formal strategic oversight, largely and especially till the time when this paper was written, but although still it holds quite a good relevance. So, a sustainable effective process means assigning specific responsibility and leadership to particular members of the board. The committee should select the criteria for review of strategic performance, oversee the design of the database and establish a review process. It should ensure the integrity and continuity of ongoing data collection, reporting efforts, identity issues for discussion with the CEO, keep the full board abreast of evidence and schedule both regular and special meetings. Things have gone quite ahead in terms of this direction. We have talked about that. For current situation, you can refer to Ministry of Corporate Affairs website, where you would find newer guidelines, newer rules and newer measurement criteria and audit framework also. You can go to the SEBI website also in terms of large public limited companies to look into how financial audits are done and so on, and there are several other government agencies which are talking about that. There have been several kinds of augmentations which have been done in the process. This paper talks about US largely as far as the framework goes, although in this globalized world many things have equated themselves in due course of time, but India you may find some differences as far as the auditing framework goes and so on. So, it can have a difference between country to country. We are referring to a larger frame of discussion here. Relationships with the CEO. So, a central objective of well designed and implemented strategic oversight process is to reduce both the appearance and the reality of confrontation over disputed turf. We have talked about the conflict of agents and the owners and the self interest aspect also. So, alertness to duty. The board must not only choose the measures and control the database, but also remain alert to varied signs of weakness. You see, governance and audit, they go hand in hand, and that is how things are. But we had to discuss this subsequent to evaluation, because evaluation process includes auditing as well. And here I end my discussion on as far as evaluation and auditing goes, but there is lot to be said as far as this whole structure goes. The objective is that ultimately we had to reach somewhere, and for reaching that place which is far away from from anyone for that matter, because organization doesn't want its life to end sooner. So for anyone, for any organizational leader, we have to take a call, we have to go ahead and keep going ahead and taking our organization ahead in terms of environmental forces. So We keep on developing evaluation criteria according to the evolving environmental situations. We have to keep on enhancing the transparency element of what we are doing and how we are doing that, and then we have to create strong measurement criteria in terms of reflecting those things in our books, as well as those numbers getting reflected upon our actions in due course of time. Then we have to create a structure in terms of our mutual relationships and control systems in terms of boards and authorities and CEOs, who can actually honestly take those things into stride and then augment the complete process as such in due course of time. And that is the whole purpose of evaluating and auditing, and it should lead towards the correctedness of the path, the augmentation of the steps, because if someday we are able to believe that we are perfect, we would become complacent, and complacency would pull us down. So, we must keep evaluating ourselves. Just to give a simile, in academics we keep on getting evaluated till the end of the life of an academician. Every now and then students, they keep on evaluating the academicians. You would also be giving the feedback of this course, and you would be appearing for the examination, and then you would be giving feedbacks and you would be raising queries now and then, and that is how I would keep on improving on whatever is to be done in due course of time as far as delivery of the subject goes. I would be catching up back with you in my next session with a very interesting discussion on black swans and the related aspects, and how we should be looking at strategy with that kind of a perspective. And I would also be talking about the sustainable goals and some of the contemporary aspects which have emerged in recent times, so as to guide the strategy and strategic path of several companies and whole of the market and economies as such. And then subsequently I would be taking you towards a philosophical thought which would say, stop predicting, focus upon living your lives, in terms of how organizations should be looking at that. That would slightly be an interesting kind of a thing which we have developed in due course of time. I would be presenting that in front of you before concluding in my last session, that would be 4th from now. I would be catching up back with you. Till then, goodbye.